Hi, I'm Tom Brookshire.
And I'm Pat Summeral. This week in the first half of our show, we'll see the championship of Pennsylvania and the championship of Texas, which ended with a division title for Dallas. And we'll also see the Cowboys' opponent of this week, the Detroit Lions, as they too made the playoffs.
And Pat, we'll take a look at the AFC's three biggest surprise teams, the Bengals, the Dolphins, who made the playoffs, and the Browns, who didn't.
The Eagles met the Steelers in the last pro football game at Franklin Field. Although interstate rivals, their methods of attack were miles apart. The Steelers moved the ball through the air on passes like this to Dave Smith, who broke Ray Jones's tackles twice on the run. But when it came time to score, they relied on the rushes of John Fuqua. Fuqua outraced the whole Eagle team for 72 yards on the Steelers' first play from scrimmage, and later rambled 85 more for his second touchdown of the day. John Fuqua amassed 218 yards rushing for the day, the best performance by a running back this year. And at times, it seemed that the only thing that could stop him was Fuqua himself. The Eagles were the reverse of the Steelers, moving well in the thrusts of Cyril Pender. But when they needed points, they got them through the air. Norm Snead first hooked up with Ben Hawkins for a 21-yard touchdown, and another Snead pass went to wide-open Gary Ballman, good for 19 yards and another touch. The Eagles got another touchdown on Terry Bradshaw's first pro punt, when Bill Hobbs blocked it and Mike Dirks fell on the end zone. With only 4 minutes to play and the game tied 20-20, Snead passes to Harold Jackson carried the Eagles into field goal range. Mark Mosley's three-pointer and a one-yard dive by Larry Watkins wrapped up the scoring as a disappointing season ended for both teams.
In Dallas, the Cowboys and Oilers met for the pro football title of Texas. But more important also at stake were Dallas' playoff hopes. The Oilers' only touchdown resulted when Calvin Hill fumbled into Johnny Peacock's hands. But Peacock's 41-yard touchdown came on a Dallas offensive error as the Cowboy defense didn't give up a touchdown for the fourth straight week. Dallas got the game's first break when Charlie Waters intercepted an Oiler razzle-dazzle. Before the game, Waters had said that playing alongside Herb Adderley, Mel Renfro, and Cornell Green, even his wife could do well, and with the kind of pressure exerted by the Dallas line, Mrs. Waters indeed might have had a good game. The Dallas defense set up the game's first touchdown, a 52-yard strike, Craig Morton to Reggie Rucker. Rucker's touchdown was his first as a pro, and on his celebration run back to the bench, he exhibited more moves than he had on the play itself. The ex-world's fastest human is the other Cowboy wide receiver. On this play, Bob Hayes remembered to hold on to his head, but forgot to hold on to the ball. Hayes' bobble didn't dissuade Morton from using him again, and a 38-yard touchdown became the start of the Bob Hayes Show. It was one of 4 Morton to Hayes scoring bolts, and brisk Bob wrapped up his show with a 38-yard dive and roll. Hayes allowed other Cowboys a chance to score, too. A Dallas punt was bobbled, batted, kicked, and dribbled to the 2-yard line from where Calvin Hill dove in. The final Dallas touchdown was set up by Steve Tyner's interception. Claxton Welch fought 5 yards for the score, which wrapped up a 52-10 whopping. Coupled with New York's loss to the Rams, the Cowboy victory brought the NFC East Division title to Dallas, much to the delight of overjoyed Cowboy head coach Tom Landry.
When you're active, the last thing you want is the uncomfortable itch of dandruff. Introducing new Head & Shoulders Refresh. It helps prevent dandruff, and its refreshing mint formula feels cool and stimulating on the scalp. No regular shampoo can give you hair so refreshed and flake-free. New Head & Shoulders Refresh from the Head & Shoulders family. Our refreshing way to help prevent dandruff.
Hey guys, when General Motors.
This is ESPN Classic.
Tom, 2 teams made the playoffs that have only been in existence 3 years, and I can remember they used to say that it took 8 or 10 years for a team to build a championship team. In the case of the San Francisco 49ers, it did take 25 years, but Cincinnati and Miami made it in just 3. What do you think accounts for that?
I really think you have to point directly to coaching this time. Paul Brown says it's the most satisfying year ever. He took the Bengals from nowhere. Greg Cook, his quarterback, was out. Perhaps inferior personnel, they made it. And Shula, after the Dolphins were embarrassed early by his old ball club, Baltimore, brought them back to win going down the stretch. 2 great coaching jobs, really, Pat.
It has to be, as you say, satisfying years for both of them, and I think tribute should be handed to both of those coaches, too. Paul Brown in Cincinnati and Don Shula in Miami. Outstanding jobs by both.
Great jobs. What's next, Pat?
Well, Tom, last week Detroit won their way into the playoffs by shutting out the Packers for the 2nd time this year, and the Bears finished their season with a victory over the Saints. Let's take a look at those games.
In New Orleans, Christmas is celebrated just like anywhere else, by giving. And both the Bears and the Saints were in their Christmas spirit as 5 interceptions occurred in the first quarter. Like true Saints, New Orleans fellow was more blessed to give than to receive. And a traditionally solid Bear defense gladly accepted the gifts. This is not the same Chicago team that won only a single game all last year. The Bears' improvement is due largely to the play of reserves like number 22 Ross Montgomery, who filled in for injured Gale Sayers. But the biggest change of all has occurred in the Chicago passing game. Young, swift receivers like number 84 Jim Seymour have given veteran quarterback Jack Kincannon the opportunity to show his long dormant skills. Last year, the big problem in Chicago was who to play at quarterback. But this year, Kincannon has been a key figure in the Bears' improved season. Seymour, acquired from the Rams, has become a valuable addition and caught 2 Kincannon passes for touchdowns. After spending most of last year on the bench, Kincannon has become a well-rounded quarterback and is combined with number 45 Dick Gordon, the NFL's leading receiver, to give the Bears another long-range weapon. It was Kincannon and Gordon again for the final score. The 24-3 Chicago victory capped a much improved year for the Bears, and especially for Jack Kincannon.
For what seems like an eternity, loyal Detroit fans have turned out hoping to see a championship team. Although the Lions have not yet captured a title, their fans have not been disappointed. The ancient series with the Green Bay Packers has become a football classic. And as usual, this year's final meeting between the two teams was a hard-hitting affair. The capacity crowds that have packed Tiger Stadium have seen Detroit become a ferocious defensive unit. A devastating pass rush and the play of wily old veterans like number 44 Dick LeBeau completely silenced the Packers. This theft by LeBeau was the 56th of his career. The loyal Lion following has also witnessed the development of a potent passing game. Number 11, Greg Landry, has matured and now has a set of gifted receivers, including number 88, Charlie Sanders. But the thing that really turns the fans on is the play of Mr. Excitement, Lem Barney. Number 20, Barney, is a talented all-pro cornerback who is doubly valuable as a kick returner, and his runs often left the Lions deep in Packer territory. In the fourth quarter, Barney again displayed more of his dazzling talent as he knifed in front of Carroll Dale to steal a pass and raced to a touchdown. Barney's 49-yard run iced the 20-0 Lion victory and sent Detroit into a playoff with the Dallas Cowboys. Thousands of fans poured onto the field in an emotional expression for their Lions. All season long, they had thrilled at the passing of Landry, marveled at the running of Barney, but they had missed the greatest run of all. Up on the stadium roof, someone was executing a perfect hook-and-go pattern. A young admirer hooked the Lions flag and hot-footed away with a trophy. We'll have more exciting action on This Week in Pro Football right after this brief message.
I've got love on my mind.
When that special feeling comes, say it with body and soul. Presenting Body and Soul.
Baby, can you stop the rain from falling here and now?
You'll hear Luther Vandross.
I promise to love faithfully.
Freddie Jackson. Get Body and Soul on 2 CDs or 2 cassettes.
When I get that feeling, I want sexual healing.
You'll get 24 sensual classics.
You know you did. I wanna shake it down. Some people are made for each other. Some people.
Then you'll have a chance to audition other great Body and Soul albums.
How about us? Let me love you down.
Call now to get Body and Soul.
To order Body and Soul, call 1-800-364-9339 or send $17.99 for 2 cassettes or
ESPN Classic.
The 1970 pro football season has been among the most unpredictable ever. The third-year Bengals were thought to be still a few seasons away from contention. And Don Shula's Miami Dolphins seem more suited to catching tans than touchdown passes. but both shook off mid-season slumps to emerge in the playoffs. Just as surprising were the Cleveland Browns, who failed to have a winning season for the first time in 14 years.
Historically, the Cleveland Browns have always been a team that loved to run. Inside or outside, Marion Motley, Jim Brown, and now Leroy Kelly, number 44, could crumble the most carefully conceived defense. But 1970 has been a major disappointment for Cleveland. And in Denver against the Broncos, the Browns again saw their famous sweep swept up by the AFC's second leading defense against the run. Problems in execution have also plagued Cleveland, but this fumble recovery, ruled down at the 1-yard line, helped turn the close game in the Browns' favor. Quarterback Bill Nelson found success through the air, as most teams do against Denver, and tight end Milton Morin had Cleveland knocking on the doorstep midway through the second quarter. Bo Scott, number 35, chimed in from the 1, and Cleveland led 10-6 at the half. The Browns broke the game open in the third quarter. With medium-range passes, Nelson and the Browns strode downfield to their second touchdown, a 43-yard pass to Homer Jones. Two plays later, the Browns had the ball again, following an interception by Erich Barnes. Nelson took just one play to convert the turnover as he passed a hit to Bo Scott. '70 has been agonizing for Denver also. Unable to decide on a starting quarterback, the job has been inherited by Alan Pastrana, number 12. The youngster from Maryland did complete 10 passes for over 100 yards, but his inexperience found a home in the Browns secondary as Dale Lindsey, number 51, made one of 3 interceptions. Although Denver was a better team than last year, they wound up with the same record, 5-8-1. The Browns were not as good as last year, but they were good enough to slide by Denver 27-13 and even their mark at 7-7.
Last Sunday, Cincinnatians turned out in record numbers to share some football history with the third-year Bengals. Behind their Cinderella quarterback Virgil Carter, number 11, the Bengals had only to beat Boston to be the youngest team ever to win a divisional title. The Bengals seemed headed for disaster in the first quarter when Carter was knocked senseless. But Carter came back moments later to throw a touchdown pass to Chip Myers, number 25. Ironically, Carter was stretched out again on the play, but this time he would not return to the game. He was replaced by Sam Weiss, number 14, who hasn't seen much playing time lately, but you'd never know it the way he performed as Carter's magic remained in the game with him. The Bengals thoroughly routed Boston. The whole Bengal phenomenon almost defies analysis, but Paul Robinson, number 18, in regaining the form of his rookie year, certainly hasn't done them any harm. In this game, he scored 3 touchdowns, and to become the complete ball player, all he has to do is become a little more enthusiastic. But in fact, the Bengals are winning on enthusiasm, for they are a team without stars, except for Speedy Thomas, number 17, and all he likes to do is communicate with them. With defensive tackle Mike Reed, number 74, back from an injury, the Bengal defense has achieved a cohesion it lacked during their early season troubles. The Bengals left the Patriots battered and stunned until the waning moments. Carter, Weiss, Robinson, Reed, they were all carrying Coach Paul Brown off the field as well they should, for he brought them back from a 6-game losing streak to overtake favored Cleveland and record a smashing 45-7 clincher for the AFC Central title. With that kind of an accomplishment, you'd think Coach Brown had earned a new hat. But Paul Brown likes old hats, and the word coming from Cincinnati is simple and uncomplicated, like an old hat. Baltimore, here they come.
Miami coach Don Shula needed a victory over the Buffalo Bills to clinch the 4th playoff berth in the AFC. And quarterback Bob Greasy was the one best equipped to deliver this victory. He was greatly helped by the Miami defense, which completely stifled Buffalo and spoiled their thoughts of playing the role of a spoiler. Dennis Shaw was persistently battered, and the Buffalo offense was unable to effectively move the ball. Number 21, Jim Kick, set a Dolphin record by scoring 3 touchdowns, all capping methodical and well-executed Miami drives. The Miami offense played almost flawlessly and left no question that Don Shula has worked a miracle with a team that had the worst record in the AFL in 1969, winning only 3 games. Number 39, Larry Zonka's catch and short touchdown run helped give the Dolphins a 31-0 halftime lead. Greasy threw only 10 passes, but he completed 7 of them. One, a 21-yard shot to Howard Twilley. Reserve quarterback John Stofa, number 5, got his chance to perform in the 4th quarter, and he promptly hit Stan Mitchell with a 36-yard pass that gave the Dolphins a highly convincing 45-7 win over the stumbling Bills. Miami's most lopsided win in their 5-year history, with a final record of 10-4, their best year ever. At game's end, Buffalo coach John Rauch could only look forward to a long winter, while Don Shula had thoughts of a sky-high team with sky-high hopes.
When you're active, the last thing you want is the uncomfortable itch of dandruff. Introducing new Head & Shoulders Refresh. It helps prevent dandruff, and it's refreshing.
The Colts and the Vikings didn't have anything on the line last week, but they won anyway to keep their momentum heading straight into the playoffs. Let's take a look at those two teams right now.
For the 2nd straight season, the Minnesota Vikings and the Atlanta Falcons finished the regular season in the soggy goo. But this year, Minnesota's super horde did not come unglued in Atlanta. Instead, the Atlanta Falcons offense suffered an acute attack of the virile Viking purple flu caused by an overdose of defense. The Falcons faltered both by land and by air, and number 20, Minnesota's Bob Bryant, added to ailing Atlanta's ills with this interception. Atlanta's only score came on this 74-yard slippery shot by John Mallory through the Vikings' usually stingy suicide squad. But the mighty, tough Minnesota Destroyers were just too much football team for the Falcons. And Norm Van Brocklin still has a piece to go in Atlanta. Paul Krause intercepted this Randy Johnson pass and advanced it inside the 10-yard line. And a well-recovered Gary Quazzo coupled with John Beasley for the score. Quazzo also teamed with number 27, Bob Grimm, and Grimm rested on his laurels after this nice catch. And and Clint Jones plugged it in for 6. Number 19, Bob Lee, turned to Dave Osborne for the Vikings' last touch. And at game's end, the Falcons were the worst for the treatment they took in the mud, 37-7.
The Baltimore Colts tuned up for the playoffs by facing their old Super Bowl foes, the New York Jets. Number 18, Al Woodall, got the Jets on the board first with this bullet to rookie Richard Castor. Earl Morrell found number 33, Eddie Hinton, wide open for the equalizer. But number 81, Jerry Philbin, dislocated this Morrell aerial, and linebacker Larry Grantham put the Jets in the lead late in the first half. But Morrell brought the poised Colts right back before the end of the half, hitting number 87, Roy Jefferson, for a long gain. Working on the left side of the Jets secondary, he speared Roy Jefferson 3 times. Then he again sprung Hinton on the opposite side to complete the drive. In the third period, the old pro, Earl Morrell, continued his mischief in the Jets secondary. Number 84, Tom Mitchell, made this good grab. Old pro Jimmy Orr did his thing once more for the Baltimore Colts and gracefully faded into the evening shadows of a great career, giving way to maturing stars like number 27, Ray Perkins. The Colts' last score came when number 83, Ted Hendricks, blocked this punt and recovered for 6 more points. The Baltimore Colts are more than a team. They are a tradition as the Jets keep learning. This time, 35-20, Baltimore.
Photographers who captured them on In Focus. Then time travel to '72 when the Lakers battled the Bucks. Tonight on ESPN Classic.
Last week, the 49ers wrapped up the NFC Western title with a convincing thrashing of the Raiders, while the world champions from Kansas City got hit by lightning down in San Diego.
In San Diego Stadium, solemn gunfire appropriately marked the season's finale. The reeling Chargers had already clinched their first losing season since 1962. But Gary Garrison's performance had been championship all the way. The Ghost still has a chance for a 1,000-yard season. The Kansas City Chiefs were unsure of their role. As the game began, they were still the Super Chiefs, and a Miami defeat would open the door to a playoff berth. Well, Lynn Dawson went after it with a 61-yard shot to number 30, Gloucester Richardson. But then the Dolphins' East Coast victory was confirmed, and the Super Chiefs no longer were. San Diego picked up on the cue, and number 21, John Hadel, remembered the good old days when Kansas City was his favorite whipping post. Hadel was teeming with an entire season of frustration, and now his therapy began with 2 short pitches to number 83, Willie Frazier. While Frazier supplied finely edged finishing touches, the Ghost gobbled up huge portions of middle ground. Garrison plumbed the depths of the excellent Kansas City secondary and measured up to his goal as he finished the season with exactly 1,006 yards. By this time, Kansas City was finished, but Hadel was just getting started on 1971. A familiar little man in an unfamiliar role dealt the Chiefs their death blows. It was ex-mini back Mike Garrett, and he brought his former teammates to their knees with 2 second-half touchdowns. A year ago, Garrett's jubilation had signaled a Kansas City Super Bowl victory. Now it marked the ironic ending point of a 1-year Kansas City championship reign as San Diego humbled the Chiefs with a smashing 31-13 victory.
In Oakland, fans paid pregame homage to the unlikely hero of an improbable season. George Blanda, middle-aged America's patron saint, had routinely pulled off miracles, and his team had already clinched a playoff berth. And now they had to settle the Battle of the Bay. It looked as though Blanda might not be needed at all when Darryl LaMonica, number 3, took after San Francisco in typical Raider style. Number 87, rookie sensation Raymond Chester strolled in to give Oakland a quick lead. Then the Raider defense took to task that prolific 49er battery. John Brody to Gene Washington. San Francisco's entire season was at stake, but Brody spent most of the confused early going in close examination of the Oakland Coliseum turf. The first quarter was Oakland's, and soon they were driving for another score. Number 25, Rosie Taylor, accepted the 49er good fortune, and suddenly even the proven points of the Oakland attack began to misfire. Proven points like the bomb to number 81, Warren Wells. Everyone had trouble staying upright, but Bruce Taylor's interception picked up the faint San Francisco pulse, and Brody suddenly remembered that he was the NFC's leading passer. He lofted a neat floater to number 82, Ted Kwolek, and the team, which had quietly folded away so often in the past, began to pick up steam. And now LaMonica could not even be sure of a sure thing. His pass started out in the hands of Chester and ended up in the possession of number 37, Jimmy Johnson. Brody now knows that Gene Washington cannot be stopped by any secondary for an entire game. Washington had only 2 receptions for the day, but one was for 34 yards and 6 points. In a sudden 6-minute stretch, the 49ers had sprinted to a 17-point lead, and Raider fans figured it was high time to let George do it. On 4 consecutive completions into 49er territory, George did it. But on the 5th, it undid him. Number 64, Dave Wilcox, saves San Francisco from another miracle, and Blanda returned to the ranks of mortality. Exit LaMonica, exit Blanda, enter the Snake. But rookie Ken Snake Stabler found that the goal-rushing 49ers were not to be denied. They forced Stabler into the 9th Raider turnover, and after a quarter century of bitter disappointment, San Francisco had its first divisional title. The joy was brief. Dick Nolan must test his title against the Vikings up in Minnesota. The 38-7 defeat left Oakland's fortunes drooping. But the Raiders have a week to get themselves back together for the playoffs, and who knows, perhaps another Battle of the Bay will take place next month in Miami.
When did you folks see the light?
On a trip to
ESPN Classic.
In a game between the Rams and the Giants, both teams had a shot at a division title. And although the Rams won, both teams came up empty-handed. Meanwhile, St. Louis went up against the Redskins with hopes of a playoff berth also. But they lost the game, and it was all over for them, too.
In Washington, D.C.'s stadium, a visitor dropped in to see if the Cardinals could keep their slim divisional title hopes alive. But while Santa was dropping in, Washington's Sonny Jurgensen was dropping back. He hit Jerry Smith in the end zone for a score, and Smith, in keeping with the Yuletide season, revived an old, if somewhat costly, gift-giving tradition. The Cardinals roared back with a Smith of their own as Jim Hart hit Jackie Smith, who made an amazing touchdown catch. Although Cardinal quarterback Jim Hart was effective, he couldn't really compete with the radar-equipped Jurgensen cannon. This 52-yard shot to the Flea Roberts set up Charlie Haraway's 3-yard touchdown run. While Sonny remained on target, his receivers became targets, but they held on. And then it was Washington Smith again as he snared another score to put the Redskins ahead 21-7. Sonny's philosophy seemed to be when you've got a good thing going, stick with it. Jerry Smith again. And though he put himself down because he was short of a score, the Redskins did get a touchdown out of it. The Cardinals' hopes were failing, but they did get themselves back in the game on a 43-yard hookup from Jim Hart to number 44, John Gilliam, who sauntered smoothly into the end zone. And then the Redskins thought it was a gift-giving time again. Larry Brown's fumble was picked up by number 26, Chuck Latterette, who raced in to make it Redskins 28, Cardinals 27. But while the Washington offense was generous, the defense got downright stingy. They forced the Cardinals to go for a field goal from the 21, and St. Louis kicker Jim Bakken proved that there was coal in his stocking as he missed the gimme field goal. The Cardinals' title hopes had been dashed 28-27, and only one man dressed in red and white left D.C. Stadium smiling.
In Yankee Stadium, the Giants were going against the Rams, and both teams had a shot at their divisional titles. Before the game, Ram coach George Allen took a vow that he would emerge victorious. But the Giants scored first on a 42-yard Pete Gogolak field goal. Giant fans have been in love with their team all season, but great loves make for great disappointments. The Rams, led by number 18, Roman Gabriel, were moving well without the ball. And when they had the ball, they were murdered. Roman Gabriel was nothing but cool and controlled. He had all day to throw, and when he unloaded, it was to Pat Studstill for 7. The same play again shows the unflustered calm that Gabriel exhibited throughout the game. The next Los Angeles score was another Gabriel to Studstill connection, and the Giant title hopes were rapidly diminishing in size. Ironically, Pat Studstill, the man who was the Giant killer, is the smallest man on the Ram team. But what a big pair of hands he has. The Rams also had a potent running attack, which flourished behind great blocking. And this touchdown by Willie Ellison put the game almost out of reach. Now all the Rams could do was hope that the Raiders would knock off the 49ers, which would make L.A. the NFC West champ. Number 34, Les Josephson, added the final insurance, and the Rams offense had to be applauded for a fine showing. At the same time, the Los Angeles defense, led by number 74, All-Pro Merlin Olsen, had to get a lot of credit too, as they effectively stifled the New York attack. With their playoff hopes dead, the only consolation the home team had was that Ron Johnson, number 30, became the first Giant player ever to rush for over 1,000 yards in a season. But the Rams needed consolation too. Although they brought the Giants down to size, they were bumped out of the playoffs when the 49ers beat the Raiders.
Well, Pat, for most teams, it's all over for this year, but for some, I think the hard part is yet to come. How about Miami trying to win up in Oakland on the Bay?
Well, that's got to be a big advantage for the Raiders. I was out there last week and spent a long time talking to Al Davis, and not only is it a rabid football town, but the Raiders have a very, very deep squad, and really that's one thing that Al Davis pointed out last week, the fact that when one of their people on their team let down, there was somebody else always there to pick them up. Very much put to example this year by the case of Blanda. When LaMonica had trouble moving the team, Blanda would come in. He felt that the real key to their success was depth and not necessarily individual stars.
Miami really has to come up with a big one then.
They will have to.
How about Dick Nolan flying the 49ers on Christmas Day into Bloomington, Minnesota to meet the Vikings? Does this give the Vikes an edge?
Oh, I always feel like this time of year playing in Minnesota on that frozen field, it's got to be like spotting the Vikings 7 points. Plus, they've come to like it. I know talking to Dave Osborne 2 or 3 weeks ago, he was saying that he really relished the thought of playing on a cold field, a frozen field like that. I think it's a tough order for the 49ers to go up there.
I think Bud Grant likes to psych the opposition with that cold weather, too.
I think so, too.
All right, Pat. Well, at any rate, we'll be back next week to show you all 4 of this week's playoff games in detail. I'm Tom Brookshire.
And I'm Pat Summeral, and we'll see you next week.